the TAs and friends are still trying to understand what language is. So we have to go back because we have a new, maybe better story. The question, when I say what language is, I mean there is language and its saying, which is with silence and this stillness, which is clearly not a question of words. Language isn't talking and it isn't saying anything, and it isn't even made up of words. But somehow, when it does its thing, and then we respond, some of what we do, at least, is we make utterances. We actually use words. So how to sort all that out? Well, there seems to be one sense of language in which language is used in a very general way, where I think it covers all the practices and their style and the way they open up and coordinate a clearing so that anything could show up that we could see or deal with or talk about at all. When he's talking on that level, then he talks about language as the house of being. And he does that early on in 45 in what you don't read the letter on humanism, but he's still doing it in 59 in The Way to Language, and he's doing it here in The Turning, which is sort of in between. It's in 49. You should realize, and I'm going to come back to this because it is important at one point to understand that Heidegger's not waffling around, we're jumping around in Heidegger's thinking, but we did, because of the thematic way it was put together, have to, or maybe you didn't have to. No, we could have done The Turning earlier. But anyway, what we did was we did The Way to Language, which is 1958. And no, that's not The Way to Language. Where's The Way to Language? 59. And then we went back 10 years and now doing The Turning, which is 49. And now we're going to go forward again, almost 10 years, to 57 to do this last thing on the question of being. I never can remember. Okay, question of being. Now, so, but the house of being story is something I think he will hold on to all the time. He certainly had it in 45, and he has it here in The Turning, which is 49, and I bet it shows up other places too. So we better have a story about that. And here he's talking about it in The Turning, where he says, at the bottom of 40, he says, prepared, we need build for the coming to presence of being, the abode in the midst of whatever is, in which being brings itself and its essence to utterance in language. So being isn't utterance in language, it gets brought to utterance in language through us. Now he says language, and that's the important thing, which is not just utterance, turns out. Language first gives to every purposeful deliberation its ways and its byways. Without language, there would be lacking to every doing, every dimension in which it could bestir itself and be effective. In view of this, language is never primarily the expression of thinking, feeling, and willing. Language is the primal dimension within which man's essence is able to correspond to being at all and its plane, and in corresponding to belong to being. Now, there's lots of things to sort out there, what all that means. So, being comes to utterance in language, that's fine. But language isn't just utterance. It's something which is behind, makes utterance possible and all kinds of coping possible. It's this dimension in which everything becomes effective. You can be effective in acting and thinking and so forth. And the dimension, I think, is it's like a disclosive space. A dimension is some, I just can't find other words, some domain, some field of relevance, anything you want like that, in which then you can act and you can talk and you can point things out and things will show up as something. And language is structuring, well, structuring is a bad word, is coordinating or fitting together the practices so as to make these dimensions or disclosive spaces possible. I'll read you quotes about that in a minute. So language is not well, for one thing, language is never primarily the expression of thinking, feeling, and willing. We've read that before. That's just the simple point that it was never the expression of something inner going outer. Because Heidegger's never, yeah. Did I say never? I said never. I could be never primarily. Sorry. It can be. I mean, I can have this is back to the Sesame Street thing. I could see a rose and have a thought rose and say rose, thereby expressing my thought, and get the girl in the picture to have the thought rose. I mean, we do it, but that is the least interesting thing language does. We only do that once we've already got a clearing, once the practices have already been coordinated, have a style, and something could show up as a rose so that I could point it out, and so forth. So that's the sense in which language isn't primarily ever any kind of expression of inner to outer. So language is the primal dimension. And we've still got that problem. We read this before. That's this unsanguished dimension. It's got to mean something like basic, within which man's essence is first able to correspond at all to being. That is, we are able to relate to anything as anything and correspond to being and its claim. That's even stronger. I think that means feel required to get in sync with the style of the practices and articulate them. And that is first able to correspond at all to being. I'll say a moment about corresponding in a minute. And its claim, and in corresponding to belong to being. Okay, now we have to say a word about correspond. Somebody happily pointed out to me how confusing that is. Since way back in Basic Questions, we remember that the correspondence story is just the story about truth that Heidegger thinks is derivative and in a certain way disastrous, because it makes it seem as if there's a reality out there independent of us, and then we have representations, and they either correspond to that reality or not. And that's been the view of truth, he says, since Aristotle. What's he doing talking about correspondence here? Well, it's an artifact of the translation. The word that gets translated correspondence back in Basic Questions is a German word, Übereinstimmung, which is correspondence. All right. I think that's right. Well, I think that's sort of right. Übereinstimmung. That's correspondence. The word that's being translated correspondence here is expression. That's to correspond. That's got features that it does literally mean to correspond. But here Heidegger's making this kind of deep pun, taking it apart and thinking of it as a way of speaking back to language, of responding. Heidegger hears this as response, as a kind of response.
Counterfeit.
What?
Counterfeit.
Counterfeit, right. Well, yes, speaking up against, but not as opposed, but as a response. And that, so this gets translated correspondence in Basic Questions. This gets translated correspondence here in Returning. And that's very confusing. But you just, so this is a good kind of corresponding. It's not a kind of corresponding that the tradition has put in as an understanding of what truth is. Yeah. Well, let's look at the context, and then we can look at the German if I have it with me. Don't think I brought it with me. Okay. Well, okay. Oh, I'm sure it is, because it's the same translator, and it's the same kind of situation. We want to correspond to the essence of what's being asked about. It's respond, means to respond in the sense it corresponds. Surely a sense question cannot be otherwise. If there was a different translator, we could worry about it. But now and so you just got to realize that here correspondence is a good thing. It's the way human beings respond to languages and beings, or in my talk, the styles requirement that they get in tune with it and articulate it in whatever way that is appropriate. This primal corresponding, expressly carried out, is thinking. Well, now we're talking not just about any old corresponding to what the situation requires, but specifically corresponding to the style, namely to the current truth of being. And this is an old story. We've heard it since origin of the work of art. The job of thinkers is to find the words that correspond to and articulate and bring out into their own most, he would say later, the current style. Or, if they're really thinkers, the future style, depending on whether they're articulating kind of thinkers or reconfiguring kind of thinkers. So this primal corresponding is carried out by thinking. Through thinking, we first learn to dwell in the realm in which there comes to pass the restorative surmounting of the destiny of being, the surmounting of enframing. Well, that's not, of course, the only job of thinking. Thinkers that have been around since Anaximander, putting the understanding of being, the truth of being, into words corresponding to it. But now the job of the thinker is to find the right words for surmounting technology. Of course, we know who that is. The thinker that's trying to do that is Heidegger. He's named Bestand, that is resources, and he's named enframing, which is the spell, and he made the flourish when he named the spell, because he's trying to respond to technology in such a way as it will get clear what it is, so that we can get into a free relation to it, instead of just being driven about by it without knowing thinking this is just how reality is, and we better get with it because maybe this push toward efficiency is what any sensible person sees is what has always been required of everybody, only finally we've got it, and now we better do it. So I think that's all I'm going to say about how House of Being comes up in here, but I thought I would go back, and you can look this up, to the way to language, because remembering there, you get another version of the same story, which is that language does the job of fitting together the clearing. Only the translation says structuring the clearing. Structuring is misleading because you might think that you could abstract the structure from what is structured. I mean, you can do that with the structure of a building or something. You can say, well, here's the structure, and they made it in steel. But certainly this clearing hasn't got that kind of structure. Kant thought it did. I mean, that would be too old-fashioned. It would be like you could find what metaphysicians tried to do. Kant thought that the 12 categories, were the structure of, he didn't call it the clearing, but he said, everything that could show up had to show up in the structure of these categories, and he thought the categories were divorceable from what showed up. So, but Heidegger wants to say something that's more, the style is not a structure you can abstract from the practice. The style is the way the practices are coordinated. So, and this is what he's talking about at the end of the third paragraph on the way to language. You don't have it, but I'll read it to you. The design is the whole of the traits of that drawing which he says, structures and prevails throughout the open. You will have to say fits together is the German word. I mentioned this already. The German word is like the word for fugue, where a fugue is a complicated structure where everything is jointed together. So the drawing which structures and prevails throughout the open, the design is the whole of the traits of that drawing which fits together and prevails throughout the open, unlocked freedom of language. I don't know quite what that means. Let's try the next sentence. The design is the drawing of the being of language, the fitting together of a showing in which are joined the speakers and their speaking. What is spoken of it is unspoken in all that is given in the speaking. Well, I think that's about how the background structure is the background and is unspoken and makes possible all the speaking. And that's, again, a view of language way beyond language having anything yet in anything I've said, especially to do with words. I've just been talking about how all these practices are coordinated so to have a style. I haven't said anything about linguistic practice. So then you might well wonder, but I have another quote. Let's see if I need to read it to it, because we can go on to the next. Well, no, I better read it. On 126, I'm still explaining at the end of the third paragraph. Saying pervades and fits together the openness of that clearing, which every appearance must seek out and every disappearance leave behind, and in which every present or absent being must show, say, and announce itself. That doesn't mean language, but that's very clear that when language is the house of being, whatever language is, it's what fits together the whole clearing. And so the question you want to ask is, what in the world does that have to do with language and words at all? And when I got to this the last time, I made, I think, the wrong move. I said, well, it's the old Heidegger mistake of saying the condition of the possibility of X is primordial X. So whatever makes it possible for us to talk must be sort of primordial talking. I think he got over that. He apologized at one point for having said about truth that primordial truth was a kind of truth. He admitted it was misleading. Can't remember when or where, but he did. So I don't think here he's going to do that. So what is the relation then of language to words? Well, our latest stab at it is that words are the best way of articulating the clearing. The thinker has to use words to articulate the clearing. The poet finds the right words to bring out the situation into its own most. And I think pure prose is when people use language to communicate and thereby bring out other people and the situation they're in into their own most or riches. So what I'm saying is language, actual utterance with words, turns out to be the paradigm way of bringing things out into their own. And the paradigm way of creating a disclosive space, or at least articulating one that's already trying to be there by responding to it, so that in it there can be more action and talking and so forth. Yeah.
You say language there. Are you talking about the words we use?
Yes, sorry. It's so hard for me to get used to this other use of language, but that's important. No, you're absolutely right. It's a good thing to stop me. Words, I should be saying. So words, one wants to know what this primordial kind of language, which doesn't seem to be words, where language is the house of being, and language is what fits together the clearing, what that has to do with words. And I want to say words are the paradigm case of two things, of bringing things in the clearing out in their own most, and of making articulating the whole style, or even naming a whole new style into being. All of this, words do this better than anything, and that's the relation between language as the house of being and people saying things.
Can you say anything about why words
are the best part? No, not a thing.
Is it in principle that we can't say anything, or is it we just don't have anything to say?
I see. I have no idea about that either. Remember what happened when I hit it, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say and Forrest has to say about it. When I just ran into a wall when all of a sudden in the origin of the work of art, he says, and language is the best of all the ways the truth sets itself to work, period, as if everybody should just believe it because he told us. And I couldn't think of what the argument was, though I could see that sounds right. I mean, it just does seem that there's compared to dancing and playing and skills of all sorts, speaking does get things out in its riches. But I don't know what to say about it. Yeah, Forrest. Yeah.
Language, not calling it names, but naming it. I think it's about here.
Yes,
but don't have words. Don't call them.
They won't come near.
They're not near. Right?
Well, that's the problem more than the answer. I mean, the question is, why can't I bring something near by doing the proper voodoo dance and get the God to come near?
You may be able to, but why is saying more?
The better it gets. So why does it get nearer or better, or more, I mean, nearer, or something like that. I think nearer is the right word.
I have no idea how.
It's the shining again. That they really do shine because the word's spoken.
Well, you're telling me, both of you, and rightly, that this is the phenomena that Heidegger's got. I wish I understood why it had to be language, but maybe that's asking too philosophical a question. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because language has a certain kind of structure.
With language.
Words. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's my fault. I'm always forgetting to say words. Go ahead. Words.
Words have a certain kind of structure, like structuring that all these other things don't have. Like dances or statues.
Temple.
And I think one of the big, first of all, it really directly mirrors, like a poem directly mirrors, like sort of the way that the difference works in holding things in tension, like holding things together in the tension thing. And also, it's one of the only things that can allow a negative space for objects that aren't present. Like you can't really, like in a dance, well, you can't like in a portrait display something that's not present. But with language, you can. In a poem, you can say things that.
That's true.
While preserving absence.
Right.
If he does say that, I agree.
It has a structure in which you can preserve a negative space.
That's interesting, but I don't think that's all that important. If it didn't, and it could still articulate style, name, new understandings of being, and so forth, that would be fine. Even if there were even if we could never get sort of the dinner in the present and absence at the same time in the classroom by reading Prochel's poem. I mean, you just push the problem back on. I mean, then I'd have to ask him, why is that so important that we should make it the house of being? Then I don't believe that structure is what it is. I don't think, because I'm nothing
So,
but that is, fugues have plenty of structure, but playing about fugue isn't going to do it, apparently. Yeah, that's for Heidegger.
well, I just think of even the opposite. Like growing up, there are things like if your mother or father frowned at you because let's say you did something really bad or gave you a really horrible look. You know, the horrible look will fade, but the words that they may have said in anger that were really cutting and disastrous, you usually keep with you. You know, you go to therapy, you know, and
You're doing it again. You're describing the phenomenon, and we want to know, and why do words do that? What is it about words? Is it the noise they make? Is it the melody of them? Is it the grammatical structure of them? A philosopher would like to know, what is it about words that gives them this incredible capacity? And why is it that and if you knew that, you might know why only words have it. But we don't know that. Yeah.
I don't know if it's just more like romantic. I'm not saying about just things.
Hmm.
I'm just saying about something that can't be. There's like more structure language sort of thing.
Yes, there is. And that's all of it.
It holds open these spaces where things can be present and absent. And I'm not sure if you could really sort of reconfigure things without that.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm not going to go on with this long, but I can think of a really nasty rejoinder to this. Namely, that's true even of the language that the analytic philosophers talk about. Good old, speech acts and I can say, Santa Claus, and even there isn't any Santa Claus, but now he's present as absent. This is what Frege and so forth love to talk about. I can't believe that's what Heidegger talked about.
Well,
but couldn't that be symptomatic
of something else? Maybe, but we haven't got it yet. I mean, just if it can be done by the worst sort of banal language, then it can't be we haven't got to the great basic thing yet.
Well,
but that should be mirrored by the thing.
I see. That's what we want to say. Okay. Okay. So I see. Okay. So they are just on to the sort of last dregs of this amazing capacity.
Like metaphysicians, right? I mean, they have an inkling that there is
something very important going on.
But they belong on sort of the right direction of the thing, but they dislocate in the thing.
Okay. Well, I still think we haven't got it, but this is the second time we've got sort of stuck on this. And if anybody can write a paper, that tells me, well, let's repeat the question. Why is it language that does this? What is there about words, not language now, I misspoke again. What is it about utterances and words that make them capable of coordinating and joining up the clearing? No, sorry, no, that's the wrong level. Capable of articulating the clearing, capable of reconfiguring the clearing, capable of making dimensions, that is, explosive spaces of all sizes. Why is it that words have a special capacity? What is it about words, and only words, that give them that special capacity? That's the question, isn't it? Okay. Now, but I don't have an answer. I don't need an answer, because we can go on without that. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward that it's true that words and only words have that special capacity, not temples and dances, or music, but why, I don't know. Okay, I wasn't going to spend time with that. I could remember we just regressed right out of this book. So back to this book. Okay, now we're changing to a whole new subject, but we're still not connected up with last time, which we will eventually. We're connected up with some specific thing that came up last time, namely the footnote about Vergessenheit. That turns out to be an immense can of worms, which is just more complicated and messy than you can realize. We're back on the very first page when I said that footnote is just a tremendous mistake. You can't mix up Vergessenheit with the word which is Verborgenheit, which gets translated concealment. You can't mix up, in the language that's being used of the translator, oblivion and concealment. They are, I want to say, as opposite as night and day. That is, I'm going to argue that concealment, which is the lethe part of aletheia, where lethe literally means forgetting, but it's not going to mean just any old forgetting. That's where the translator's gone off the rails. So the lethe part of aletheia, the concealing part of unconcealment, which is, remember, the word for truth, is the most positive thing that Heidegger can think about. Whereas oblivion, Vergessenheit, is about the most negative thing that Heidegger can think of. They are the opposite poles in ontology. That's what I want to argue. And then I want to say the translator hasn't quite simply blown it, because it's not that simple. There's a middle thing between these two poles, and he's gotten confused by it. But first, let's do the two poles. The concealment, the lethe and aletheia, we come across it as a positive ontological principle in at least 3-4 ways that I know of. It's the way the clearing necessarily withdraws in order to do its job as clearing, the illumination in the room story. That's a certain kind of concealment, and a very positive kind. There wouldn't be any clearing if it wouldn't get out of the way and let you relate to the things in it. One, the clearing. There is also the earth, which is part of the concealing. Remember, the earth is that which is concealed and struggles to stay concealed. The earth is a kind of, among other things, a reservoir of other practices that the culture might someday make important. So it's a whole richness and wealth, you'll hear him talk about that, that is involved in what's concealed. There's this whole reservoir which is concealed. And this concealing is a kind of safeguarding, he says. That is, what's concealed is sort of not going to be banalized and technologized and so forth. It's a very lucky thing for things that are concealed, that they're concealed. He's talking about this on 45, about 10 lines down. The giving of light simultaneously keeps safe and concealed darkness of its origin as the unlighted. Well, there you can just see that the concealed darkness is the source of things, it's the origin, and it's where they're safe. So all of that says, boy, is lethe a good thing, is concealing. So, now, forgetting, on the other hand, it comes in two stages. The first stage of forgetting is the forgetting of being, and it's that distortion of the clearing, which we get in metaphysics, which covers up, and in that sense, conceals. But now we've got a different sense of conceals. That's what confuses the footnote, the translator. That now hides or covers up, metaphysics hides or covers up or conceals in a way that is of no positive merit in itself, but preserves a little bit of what's really going on anyway. What's going on with the clearing? Because remember, metaphysics is a certain kind of distortion of the clearing. What kind? Just to review. Well, one, it totalizes the clearing and says everything is X. Second, it has some one being in terms of which it claims that everything is going to be explained. In terms of some being is being. And finally, of course, metaphysics ignores the clearing because it thinks it's got the correspondence truth. That is, what metaphysics says, metaphysicians believe, corresponds to the way things really are. So there are three things wrong with metaphysics. It's terribly, seriously wrong. It's very bad to have a totalizing view. There's no place for the marginal practices. It's very bad to have a view in which you think that you can explain the mystery of beings, that they're intelligible and they exist at all by just finding another being that's bigger and better, and make it the explanation of that. And of course, it misses the fact that it's a clearing at all. It's doing all this. If it takes any particular understanding of being as just that's how it is. Yeah.
And yet, for all that, you're not saying metaphysics is totally bad.
No, and for all that, at least metaphysics, in its mistaken and distorted attempt to get at something that's more fundamental than beings, has a glimmer of, is responsive to something that's going on, that it will be even worse off when we lose metaphysics, which we have with technology. We don't even anymore have that.
And you're willing to say it's also ascending.
Yes. Well, metaphysics is a distorted and totally, missing it kind of response to ascending. That is, what it doesn't understand ascending as ascending, but it responds to it, but it takes it up anyway. Yes, it's a kind of response that doesn't realize it's a response. That's another way to put it.
Does any sending then realize it's a response?
What?
Does any sending understand itself?
Not yet. Not yet. No, not yet. But of course, we've never had it right. We ought to understand descending as ascending and be grateful for it, but nobody's done that. So every metaphysic has missed what's really going on, and some of them have missed it more than others. But that's not important for us right now. So I'm going to read something on 41 now because I have written down that's going to help you understand this. No, not 41. That was there. I wanted to just get straight about correspondence, but I've already got straight about correspondence. So look at 47. Do I mean 41?
About the danger.
No, I don't think I want to do that yet. I could look at it. Let's see. No, I don't think so. I think, let me try 47. What was I looking for there?
There's another corresponding there. But
Yeah, they're where? On 47?
yeah, last.
Yes, that's what I was a little interested in, but why I don't know yet. There's a correspondence. I had marked, and in thus corresponding man is gathered into his own, that he within the safeguard element of the world may be immortal. That I don't know why I got 47 or 41. I think it was, yes, you're right. Liz has figured it out. I was going to talk about how to read corresponding, and those are two places where the word occurred. We don't need to think about that. Okay, now, so first there's positive concealment. Then there's Vergessenheit, the forgetting of being. You're going to read a lot about that in the thing we're reading for next week. And that's metaphysics. And then comes where we are in technology, which is the forgetting of the distortion, where there isn't even any metaphysics. So we've lost all touch with the fact that there's any sending and any clearing. So we're all there is, as Heidegger sometimes puts it, for us now there are beings and nothing more. And that's nihilism in Heidegger's definition. That's really the forgetting of the forgetting, or the ultimate, in the language of the translation, the oblivion of the oblivion. The oblivion stage is metaphysics, where the clearing is misunderstood, but it's still the clearing that's being misunderstood. Then comes the oblivion of the oblivion. Yes. Okay. And then there is beings and nothing else. I just want to say this. As I said this morning, I understood something that I've never understood before. So I'll just tell you. It's a kind of almost like a Heidegger joke. I mean, because sometimes Heidegger says Plato is already nihilist, and then sometimes he says, Nietzsche's nihilism. How could Plato also be nihilist? Well, if you're a metaphysician and think there's a supreme being, like the good, you already believe that there are beings and nothing more. Our whole tradition has from the start believed that there was beings and nothing more. So in a certain sense, metaphysics is nihilism from the start, but then it gets even more nihilism when you end up with, you don't even believe there's a supreme super being, you just believe everything is this kind of middle-sized dry goods and nothing more, and then you're in real trouble. Yeah.
Is having beings and nothing more enough? Is that what makes our understanding into an unworld?
Yeah, I think so.
Like
That's good. That's good. Yes, I think that's right. And that is because if we don't understand being, of course we don't understand world either. And not only in our understanding we don't, but in our actions we don't. We're just coping with one thing after another.
Right, but not only do we not realize, but
we sort of deny.
Yeah.
Yes, forgetting that you've forgotten it means that you don't even miss it, is a way to put it. I mean, that's really the bad kind of forgetting. When you not only have distorted it, but you got to the stage where you're not even distorting it anymore. There's no more metaphysics, but you're not even missing it, and you don't feel that there's something left out. That's the oblivion of the oblivion. That's important. I mean, it's that our distress is so hidden from us, Heidegger thinks, that is so, we're so out of touch, not only with the clearing, but we're out of touch with the fact that we are suffering from being out of touch with the clearing. All of that is in this forgetting, I think. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking that the problem that we were having, it's the oblivion of the oblivion that you're talking about, not the oblivion of oblivion.
That's the last stage. I'm now in stage 3, the oblivion of the oblivion. That's the really bad time.
But the oblivion is such would be metaphysical.
I suppose. Now we have.
Therefore, there is something so
right.
that oblivion is such is not as bad as you may want to make it out, because it could be worse. Namely, forgetfulness. Yeah.
That's true. But now I want to say, yeah, that's absolutely right. But we mustn't lose track of, and that's what the translator lost track of. There is just the world of difference, night and day, between the concealing business, which is the positive reservoir, safeguarding, marginal practices of Earth, and both kinds of forgetting. The oblivion and the oblivion of the oblivion are both. They're not even on the same track. It's not as if they're less Earth in them or less safeguarding. They're just out of touch with the positive phenomenon. Well, out of touch is too extreme. They are a reflection, a pale reflection, metaphysics, of the concealing phenomena, the positive Earth story. But the idea that because they have distorted it, they are still a mode of it, I think that seems to me very odd, because they've gone from being a kind of positive version of it to being to have lost, let's see what they've lost. They've lost the reservoir character of other practices because they're totalizing. They've lost the earth character because everything should be present in all metaphysics. They've lost the safeguarding because metaphysics is trying to sort of lay its hands on it all and confirm it all. They've lost the withdrawing of the clearing because they've lost the clearing altogether. All they've got is a sense that there's something else going on that we should be responsive to. I don't think that's enough to say that they've got any sense of the concealing. But I see Forrest is right. I mean, what the translator is saying is, well, they're somehow related. But what I want to say is, related they might be, but there's all the difference between the way you understand it when you talk about concealing and aletheia as the most positive thing. Concealing is the most positive thing you can have. And this forgetting thing, which is at best a pale reflection of this positive thing, that has lost most of it, and at worst the beginning of a double thing, which will be the forgetting of the forgetting, which is, you see, notice that it goes to zero with the forgetting of the forgetting, whereas there would be nothing wrong with the concealing of the concealing, I think. It wouldn't go to zero. It would just, things would be even more hidden and protected. And I'm off on it. Never mind. Forget that. I have no idea about that. John. Forrest.
Yeah. Reading out the importance of the view. It's like reading world out.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, you couldn't.
So concealing is positive, but it's not just positive even when everything is unconcealed. Or everything is concealed. That's what it is.
No, I agree with both of you on that. Right. Concealing is the positive, is part of a positive dimension which contains the unconcealing as equal to it. Right. But forgetting, another way to put it is, I think, forgetting isn't on any dimension like that. It isn't as if there's maybe that's another way to see how different they are. There's nothing, well, that's interesting. There's nothing like the dimension forgetting, unforgetting. It's not in that even in that sort of structure. Whereas, you see that? I mean, concealing gets its richness over against unconcealing. Earth struggles with world. But forgetting doesn't get its richness by struggling with something or being related to something called remembering. It just is distortion. Yeah, go ahead. Remembering being. The remembering of being. Yeah, the remembering of being is getting in touch with being, but it's not a mode of relating to forgetting, it seems to me. I mean, you can remember being, even if you're just, let's hope in the next stage when there's a new God and a new understanding of being, we're remembering it all the time. That is, we're thankful and we know we're receivers. That doesn't mean that we're therefore having a constant struggle with forgetting. I don't think. Yeah.
This is the relationship again between homecoming and birth and wandering. It does have a relationship with getting without homecoming, without going away.
Yes, right. But I'm trying to think. That seems to be a different structure. That just says, because when you return, then you can throw away the forgetting as if it was a kind of ladder, and you're back where you would have been if you'd never been forgetting. It isn't as if you've got something new, unless you're a Hegelian.
No. Homecoming is going to be different than never having gone out.
Yeah.
Because you need the forgetting.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not. I mean, homecoming certainly you'd have to be wandering. So when you get home in your homecoming, have you got something you couldn't have had if you hadn't been wandering?
Definitely, middle Heidegger.
That's interesting.
I also think that's what he means here on 39 when he talks about a surmounting, that destroying surmounting is similar to what happens when in the human realm when it's over grief or pain.
Well, that's the crucial line. I would have said, when you get over grief or pain and you've recovered and you convalesce, you could say, and you're a stronger person for having gotten over the grief and the pain. or a different person, well, you'd have to be a stronger person to make the case that homecoming was, or that
Well,
getting was necessary.
No, I mean, at the very least, you wouldn't be returning home to the same spot, right? Because you'd
Right.
be a
But,
different
but
person.
yeah, but
And then, I mean, Forrest would like it to be you're stronger.
that's right. That's it would be. I mean, Nietzsche is clear that convalescing puts you're stronger than you were when you got sick. Nietzsche says, well, that what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Now, I don't know if that's in here. I mean, it seems to me that Heidegger hasn't got that, but I don't know. I mean, what I would have thought is Heidegger thinks that there is this state which would be the right state to be in, where we are receivers and know we're receivers of being, and understand gods as gods and so forth. And we might have had that from the start, but we didn't. But when we finally get it, later Heidegger says we could just stop worrying about the tradition and forget the whole history of being once we get there. What do you think?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, but he said before that the history is, important because, but if you're going to say now, I'm just getting that done.
Oh, I say that eventually I'll try to find the line. Very late Heidegger says we should stop worrying about the history of being, but that's not really conclusive, because one would say that we really couldn't stop worrying about the history of being until we're in the new one, and Heidegger doesn't think we're in the new one. So whatever he means there, I think he means that, well, I don't know what he means there. If I find it, I'll bring it in. Yeah.
Well, based on the Hubert
Yeah.
poems, the idea is that, and then it is really different. You could never really know what it is to be at home until you've gone.
Well, that's the fortunate fall story. I mean, Heidegger certainly may have something like that structure, but what I want to know is, it's everything Forrest says is sure. You wouldn't have homecoming if you hadn't gone away from home. But when you got homecoming, have you got something that you couldn't have got if you hadn't gone away from home? That's the fortunate fall. That's the Hegelian Christian structure. I don't know whether Heidegger buys a lot of Christian structures.
But I think this is different from Hegel.
Yeah, well, Hegelian, yeah, but the question is, in Hegelian, homecoming is great, and homecoming is certainly where we're going to get, because we've gone away. I mean, we're all going to agree to that. That we have been out in the cold, we have been wandering, we've had metaphysics, and now we're going to come home. Does Hegelian say that once we come home, we'll be better than we had been if we hadn't been wandering?
Not better, but we would not, only by going and having those kind of contests, then we really know who we are.
Well, wait a minute, that's a new move. I'm lost with that. Wait, first, only by doing that can we have homecoming, that's sure. The question is, when we've got homecoming, have we got something we couldn't have had? I mean, other than homecoming, have we got some profound new phenomena and a new way of behaving that we couldn't have arrived at, except by having gone through the metaphysics and the wandering and the nihilism?
I think we have a different one.
We understand who we are, namely receivers of understandings of being. But the question is, couldn't we have understood that without this detour through metaphysics and
Not
nihilism?
according to both Hegel and Heidegger, I think.
Really? Okay, well,
But that doesn't mean we're bigger and better.
well, deeper than.
Or I think whatever we're.
Better understanding of who we are. Well, one, I'd like to see it in Middle Heidegger. Show me.
Yeah.
And secondly, what you said, you're intimating that maybe later Heidegger dropped it. Is that what you think?
Oh, he got homecoming.
Okay. Okay. Well, it could be. I mean, we can entertain this possibility that Middle Heidegger thought that we could only have had this Christian Hegelian idea, that we could only have really understood ourselves as disclosures and receivers of being and have the right thankful attitude toward being by having made the metaphysical mistake of gone to the bottom of nihilism and now come back. And maybe later Heidegger didn't think that anymore. I don't know.
There's the whole story in the middle about strange.
Yeah, the stranger comes in, for instance, in the poem we read, to the dinner from wandering outside. Okay, and suffering over the pain and the thresholds. Yeah, there is all that in Middle Heidegger. Yeah.
At least in this is the 55, but he still has the home. And it's always will fun.
Yes, but now the question is, keep your eyes open as you read the next assignment. I was going to say, I bet it's in there. There's going to be homelessness for sure, because we don't dwell. And the question is the homelessness a necessary condition for our becoming dwellers? That's the one way to put it. Is having gone through homelessness in the late Heidegger now, so we're going to go to read 57 for next time. Keep your eyes open. I don't know whether he's going to answer it. Does he still think that you've got to go through this fall to get to the right relation, that is, to be authentic disclosers and receivers of understanding of being? I don't know. It's great to have a good question. Okay, should we go on? And we go on. Where are we? We've done the Vergessenheit question. But I have a whole lot more stuff here that I have to read to myself to see if we've done it about this issue. Just a second. Well, it's important to know, I'm going to say one more thing about this issue, that Heidegger is not just the translator. Heidegger himself is failing to make a distinction, which I think he would want to make. He is going to use the word for concealing, both as this kind of safeguarding, earth-like withdrawing, and as a normal German word for any kind of hiddenness. And that's going to be confusing. So on 46, you can see this happening. I think. Is it on 46? No. Yes, the last sentence. The coming to pass of oblivion is not only lets fall. Translation hasn't got from remembrance. Cross that out. Doesn't matter though. But coming to pass of oblivion not only lets fall into concealment. Now see, that's bad. If you fall into concealment, then concealment's a bad thing. And if concealment's a bad thing, then you can't tell it from forgetting. So there is a problem. I mean, I would like to be able to tell you now that concealment, that's one good thing. That's a good thing always. Oblivion, that's a bad thing always. Concealment is Verborgenheit. Oblivion is Vergessenheit. It isn't so simple. But I think the following, that the point is to keep your eye on the phenomenon. And when you keep your eye on the phenomenon, you won't get confused. You'll understand the difference between the good kind of concealing and the bad kind of concealing. The good kind which preserves and safeguards, and the bad kind which covers up and distorts. Just keep your eye on the ball. Okay, now let's see. And when you try to recover metaphysics, which you're going to hear about more in the reading for next time, ask yourself whether the point is to recover the metaphysics or to recover what the metaphysics has distorted. See, I think that it's clearly that's what he has to have in mind. Keep in mind what he has to have in mind, and then see if you can make sense of it that way. Let's see. So what we've got is, we should be attuned to a style, I'm still thinking about this, which is of course concealed. And its being concealed is a good thing too, that's the withdrawing. But forgetting is losing touch with that style, either partially as in metaphysics, or double concealing, which is losing touch with the way you've lost touch with it, and that's the really bad situation. I agree with Forrest, it's a really bad situation, you gotta have double concealing. Yeah.
When you say we can be attuned to a style which is concealed, is this what will happen? Would this be active turning?
Yes, we could have been, I think, once, but we never were. Okay. Yes, no, the pre-Socratics were in tune with the style, even though they didn't know it. Okay. They were in tune with Croesus, but they didn't know it.
We would, so if we got into relation to technology, right, we would realize that technology was just another variable, was just one way.
And we'd be in tune with it.
And we'd be in tune with it.
And we'd bring it out.
It wouldn't be concealed from as mode of feeling.
That's
right. But when it was working, insofar as it was working,
it would be concealed from us like the light in the room. Okay. That's right.
If we wanted to pay attention to it, we would know it was there and sort of some sense.
That's right. We could be in tune with it. And we would somehow, we'd know it was there, sense it or something. But insofar as we were busy in our activity, it would just be in the background. Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. Now, here's another way to try to make the distinction I'm still trying to make. How different Vergessenheit is from Aletheia. We want to recover from Vergessenheit, from this forgetting. Both kinds. The metaphysical forgetting and the forgetting of the forgetting. But we don't want to recover from aletheia. I mean, that is from the lethe of aletheia, the concealingness. You don't recover from concealingness. You just see it as a very positive, fruitful part of the struggle between earth and world. You'd be well off if all Vergessenheit, all forgetting were gone. And then you'd be in good shape. But you couldn't imagine a condition in which all concealing was gone. You'd be in terrible shape. You wouldn't even be a human being anymore. So they're pretty different. Pretty different when the more one of them is gone, namely forgetting, the better off you are. And the more the other one is gone, the worse off you are. I mean, I'm trying to find ways of making clear that this footnote is misleading. Yeah.
I don't see how. Or you have that better off?
Yes, the more there is the richness of the struggle between earth and world, the more there is concealing, struggling against revealing. No, okay, but the more you have the concealing brought out by the struggle, the better off you are. Okay. Well, I mean, you can't, sure, it doesn't matter, because you can't ever say the more the forgetting is brought out by anything, the better off.
Well, I think you can, because he's saying here that he has restored surrounding with translation. So you have to restore it.
Well, I want to say you have to restore what's been forgotten by the Vergessenheit. It would make no sense to want to restore the Vergessenheit. That's really the difference between us. There's nothing good to be gotten from restoring the Vergessenheit. What you really want to do is go through it, as it says in the German at one point. Durch, you go through it. I was going to talk about that. In fact, maybe we should talk about that. Yeah, Edward, you want to say something? Okay. So where is this passage that we got with the through it this morning? Oh, that's okay for next time. No wonder we're not doing it. You keep your eye open. Again, Forrest is raising the right questions to think about. Keep your eye open for in what way we want to recover what is forgotten in this forgetting, and how we're supposed to understand that. Given that I'm saying the more forgetting the worse and the less forgetting the better, why would one want to recover any forgetting? And you may have an answer to that. But let's save it. I think, let me go on here. I'm now worried about running out of time. Just saying. Yeah, I have two other quotes to see if I can get anything from them in a hurry. Well, we have to read this on 39 because it's relevant. This is this business of overcoming in the right way and the wrong way to overcome the technology on the third line of 39. Maybe we have to go even further. I guess we have to go back to the bottom of 38. Because being as the essence of technology has adapted itself into and framing, because man's way of working, remember we have to keep fixing that, belongs to being's way of working, inasmuch as being's working needs the working of man in order to remain kept safe as being in keeping with its own working in the midst of whatever is, and thus as being to work. For this reason, the working of technology cannot be led into the change of its destiny without the cooperation of the working of man. All right, so far that's just fine. Through this cooperation, however, technology will not be overcome by men and is just gotten rid of. On the contrary, the coming to presence of technology will be surmounted. That is, and another word could be recovered. That's the same word, right? We could say recovered in a way that restores it to its yet concealed truth. Now again, keep your eye on the phenomena. What would that mean? That would mean we would get technology as ascending, as a gift, as a mode of givenness. That's its concealed truth, namely that it is a mode of givenness. This restoring surmounting, that is, this getting in touch with technology as a mode of being, a mode of truth, is similar to what happens when in the human realm one gets over grief or pain. Now that just means, it seems to me, you've been in this bad state, distorted in technology, and if you could get into the right relation to technology, you get over the pain of having your essence distorted. Does it mean something different to you? I think that's.
That's why.
You mean you want to get over the forgetfulness?
But that is getting over it by being forgetful of forgetful.
Really? I would have thought that you would want to get very clear about the forgetfulness and not forget it, but sort of put it behind you. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's.
Okay, well, you certainly want to stop.
Through it.
Okay, you're going to get through with it.
Oh, through it. No, I think actually getting through it, which means.
You have to engage in it. That we are disagreeing still. I mean, we are stuck in it, I think, but we will get out. We should get out of it. You think we should keep it around and sort of keep our forgetfulness around?
Keep it around only by getting it. No, it's not just it's double negative.
Okay, I mean, I don't have any phenomena there. My phenomena indicator goes to 0, right? So I have to go on. The air is too rarefied. Okay, I want to do one more, because this might be relevant to what Forrest just said. It's the sense in which the forgetting is supposed to be part of the saving. This is going to be very important on page 43, starting with the second paragraph about 4 lines down. In the entrapping, what comes to presence is this: the being dismisses and puts away its truth into oblivion in such a way that being denies its own mode of givenness. I'm always putting it in this other language, which is just easier to understand. When accordingly the danger is as danger, then the entrapping, it is the way being itself entraps its truth with oblivion. This is where Forrest and I are going to have something to say. Comes expressively to pass. That is, I take it that appropriating or giving comes into its own. Let's read it again. Then the entrapping, that is, the way being itself entraps its truth with oblivion, comes expressly to pass. That is, we experience the danger as the danger. Is that what you think that is?
Yeah.
Okay. When this entrapping with oblivion does come expressly to pass, that is seen as the danger as the danger, then oblivion as such turns in. Then I would have thought, we both would agree, oblivion goes away. That is, forgetting goes away, because when you see the danger as the danger, you're not forgetting anything anymore.
Well, there's these 2 words that after you read.
You mean and abide? That's not in the German. That's not in the German. Oh, well, that makes all the difference, maybe. That's right. If oblivion turned in and abided, who knows, we'd have a problem.
But it turns in.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it turns in. I mean, what I would like it to do is to turn into something else. But to turn into something else, we don't know quite what the oblivion as such turns in. Well, I say, what I really think when I read that is, well, good night, oblivion. We don't have to pay any attention to you anymore. I don't know what it means. That's the German. It means sort of turn in and go to bed. I don't know what he's saying there. Thus rescue through this turning from falling away out of remembrance, it is no longer oblivion. Isn't that sort of on my side? I mean, so now we're not forgetting it anymore. It's not as if the oblivion is still around. The oblivion is turned into something else. That's when I hear turning in, I know it isn't in the German, but I think it's like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. So once the oblivion is recognized as, and we get over the oblivion because we recognize the danger as the danger, then it's no longer falling out of remembrance, so it's no longer oblivion. Now,
Like the next sentence.
okay, with such intimacy, the oblivion relating to being safekeeping is no longer the oblivion of being, but rather turning in thus, it turns about into the safekeeping of being.
So it sounds like, I mean, in a way, it sounds like it's supporting both of you. It's saying,
Okay.
look, it's no longer the oblivion of being, right? But it's still present as a kind of concealment. The safekeeping, the kind of concealment that is safekeeping.
The oblivion relating to being self-keeping. Well, I don't think the way I read it, the oblivion relating to being self-keeping is no longer the oblivion of being. I see. I wonder what's going on there. I would have thought it would be concealing that. I see what you mean. It's related to being safekeeping is no longer the oblivion of being, but rather turning in us, it turns about into the safekeeping of being. So oblivion, that is distortion. How can distortion turn into safekeeping? Well, how though? I mean, distortion. Well,
Well, when you, I mean, you're right, here as it remains and turns into a grief, you can nothing here, you want to.
I want to hear caterpillar butterfly.
It doesn't turn into, I'm Kevin and I'm Colin, and it's all pretty fine.
Yeah. I think the German does not support it, caterpillar butterfly. It turns into the safekeeping of being. I don't know what that means, but until I can hear a phenomenon that tells me what it means, I will leave it to everybody to worry about. How and why would anybody want to keep safe the forgetfulness of forgetfulness? John, you can.
Morning and morning practices, which keep around the monuments through worry about that, then perhaps there's
Well, I see that in grief you interiorize the other person and you, so to speak, keep them around.
Like remembering.
Right. That's right. What I don't understand there is how you could get grief and pain into the same sentence, because grief is something about how the world breaks down and how you internalize the other and so forth. And pain, when you get over pain, the story is you just get over it. You've forgotten it. You're done with it. The more you forget it, the better. Nobody goes around trying to see that they, preserve a memory of their pain. Yeah, so would I. And you think that the pain, it must be the pain of grief, in other words. Now, well, I used to think that was very important about grief, and it may still be, but I don't get it yet. Yeah.
Have to go away, so like back pain, you guys don't have to work every day.
Yeah, but would you say that you've gotten over it?
Well,
I would say you've just, Provindo. Recover. I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't say that you recovered from it when you've just gotten so you can go on anyway.
like a recovering overcoming.
Yeah, well, it's got to do with overcoming sort of what? But it's not overcoming. It's not überwinden. It's definitely recovering from, convalescing from, and I guess there's a lot we don't understand in here. I grant you. I don't know, and I don't understand. I mean, I have no phenomenon to put why anybody would want to keep around the forgetting once they've remembered what they had forgotten. Then they would say, "Good, now I've remembered what I've forgotten. I don't have to keep forgetting it."
I guess you just keep going. Quickly forget about it. It's gone and it's a big deal. But if this is still historical, it's still with you in some sense. It's still there. It has to remain historical moment in where you currently are. So I don't think it's you haven't getting over it from that.
Well, it's really a funny thing here. It's as if one of us is on the grief line, one of us is on the pain line. You want to not forget your grief, and the more you forget your pain, the better. And which are we supposed to follow? I mean, nobody wants to remember their pain. Yeah.
the rest of that paragraph is about the historical standing of another destiny.
Right. And what are we going to do about that?
So that makes it sound more like a grief story.
Really? I would have thought when you got the new one, are you still supposed to remember the old one?
Well, a new one unfolds out of the old one, and it's in some sense present, but also transcendent.
And when you've got the new one, are you still remembering the old one, or once you've got the new one, you don't have to remember the old one?
I mean, you're not keeping it in mind, right?
But you've got it interior.
Well, it's being brought. I mean, it's being brought along in having been in the way it's been transcended.
Right. This is a turning, not a parousia.
Not a what?
Parousia. I mean, it's not a total breaking in nowhere or from above or whatever. It's a turning. And so the turning is going to.
Okay, well, maybe we could have a compromise coming out here. And so far as it's a turning, I will try to think that you should hold on to the forgetting, though it's hard.
It's
but
a
once
turning
it's
in, not a turning.
Okay, but when that turning gets a new destiny and a new God, then I think it's you can totally forget the whole previous forgetting.
But think about the history of being we've had so far, right? I mean, all unfoldings of history, right, are unfoldings from what has come before, right, stem from them, do move beyond them, right, and so in that sense, no, you're not focused on the Christian, but that has been, is in some way.
Yeah, but that's all within the history of metaphysics. I don't know
Well,
if that's going to be.
that's why I'm saying it's important that you
There's
go.
a big, yeah, but there's a big break here, of course. And I want to say, and I think what later Heidegger is going to come along and say. I mean, I think, you know, that you two may be right about this, but I think later Heidegger is going to come along and say, if you really had this big break, you'd be better off forgetting the whole thing, the grief, the pain, the whole metaphysical tradition.
I thought that with technology and
We are. We're,
here it makes it look
sounds like they were not at the end of history. That's part of the problem. You want to say something about it? You? Yeah. Okay. As long as everybody has brought up, let's go on reading because we haven't really got to the end of history part, which is very interesting and puzzling. So we got the fact that this very puzzling thing with the interning, the oblivion relating to being safekeeping is no longer the oblivion of being. So somehow the oblivion is still around, but it's not oblivion anymore. I don't understand that, but I see that he says that. But rather turning in us, it turns about into the safekeeping of being. That's sort of the grief story, I guess. That now it's something that we remember, that we've been through, and it's going to be preserved that way or something. I don't know. But then here's the next thing. When the danger is the danger, and that's what will be happening when we get over the oblivion of the oblivion, that's sure. When the danger is as the danger, with the turning about of oblivion, the safekeeping of being comes to pass, world comes to pass. That worlds comes to pass, and that the things, this is the distant advent of the coming to presence, that is the there it means the coming into its own most of being itself. That really means at that point you're going to get a new God, I think. But you wouldn't know it from that. But I thought we were reading a different one. Where's the other one? Okay, go back to 39, because there you can tell that it means a new God. I mean, the one I just read, you never know whether you thought it was a new God or just a lot of things thing. But then I think later Heidegger is going to be happy with just a lot of things thing. But here, I'm going to read now about 10 lines from the top of 39. That the surmounting of a destining of being, here and now, the surmounting of enframing, each time comes to pass out of the arrival of another destiny. See, that's a reconfiguring. That's a whole new understanding of being. Destining that does not allow itself either to be logically and historicologically predicted, of course not, because it's a total gestalt shift, or to be metaphysically constructed as a sequence belonging to a process of history, of course not. It's not something Hegelian. It's only a real reconfiguring, finally, can surmount enframing. Now what we're arguing about is, when that happens, are you still in the business of the safekeeping of forgetting, or has that been a kind of transitional state where you are preparing the way for the surmounting of enframing? What's the word for surmounting, I wonder? Which is it's all verwunding.
So it's surmounting. He wants to get the idea.
Verwunding. So the verwunden of enframing each time comes to pass out of the arrival of another destiny. Isn't that interesting? So then the new destiny will be one in which we will have, the clearing as the clearing. And the first stage of getting the clearing as the clearing will be to see the danger as the danger. And the question is sort of what's the role of forgetting in seeing the danger as the danger? And what's the role of forgetting in the next stage when there's a new God, but and we have got out of that stage and we're seeing the clearing as the clearing? Because even here, answering you, it can't just be another metaphysical effort coming along. Could it? You wouldn't think so. I mean, you can't think that because enframing is the end of the line. So it's got to be the new God with the new understanding of being is sent, and that one is,
I think don't be, I think that's not right. He doesn't say that here.
no, he doesn't.
And that, well, and it's all around. It sounds as if the surmounting comes to pass through the new destiny, which is still stemming from, right? I don't know what's in before. Which makes it sound like you have to.
It sounds like what? Rest of a big breath. And yet, it does seem also like it better be a
Gotta
big
be a big
breath. Really? Really? Not another God in 49. You mean he's given up the idea or another God, or hasn't got it yet? What? Thank you.
That only another God can.
But there's a lot of other God talk here on 39. Well, that's what we are. How about 43? Well, I just want to see all my other God. What are you going to say? Okay. The advent of a coming to presence for being itself. No, if that isn't a new God, how about back to 39?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think maybe not. I don't have any clear statement that it's a
I
new
think
God.
you talk about the possibility of God again and move on because what I
Okay, but well, on 35 though, remember this is exactly the same set of lectures as the question concerning technology. Remember at the top of 35, could it be that the fine arts are called to poetic revealing? Could it be that revealing lays claim to the arts most primally, so that they for their part may expressly foster the growth of the saving power, may awaken and found anew our look into that which grants, and so forth. And that always seemed to me new God talk, to found anew. You don't think so?
not necessarily, that's all.
Well, it needn't be a God. I mean, a thinker will do, but it has to be a reconfiguring
Okay,
something of it.
that's.
Okay. Yes, it doesn't have to be a God.
Dispensation.
Right. It has to be a dispensation that's going to reconfigure, and that we know what that has to be, either a God or a thinker or a statesman or a work of art. Something has to come along and do it. I guess we're not disagreeing about that.
But I think at this stage it's more the possibility of return of God.
Well, that's a different thing. The plural gods that have fled. There seems to be a need for something to focus a total new understanding of being to come along, whatever that is. Okay, let me say one more thing, and then you can. So one more thing you should keep your eyes open for as you read the next essay, which I'm going to keep my eyes open for, is whatever this sort of total new understanding of being story is that we just got into. And whatever it needs to do it, a new God or a new something or other, is he still holding that in 57? Or does he think in 57 that things thinking is enough to save us? I mean, the question, to put it another way, things thinking is part of this period. It was written at the same time as this, 49. When he does the thing thinking essay and this, it sounds like things thinking are a kind of holding pattern which will save us, well, not save us, which can resist technology, and that's fine, but that they're only sort of waiting until a new God comes along, or a new dispensation, a new sending of a total understanding of being. Now, is he still thinking that in the essay you're going to read for next time, or does he get to the point of view where just a world of things thinking would be enough and that we wouldn't need a new total understanding of being and a new God? I don't know. I'm eager to find out. Okay, we'll have a good vacation. We'll think about all that when you get back.